Okay, so this week's guitar lesson is a continuation of what we looked at last week. This is the part 2. And last week we looked at finding a single note on the fretboard and building an entire lead off of that one note, how you can do that in multiple spots on the fretboard. And this week we're going to take that same concept, but we're going to continue to build on it. I'm going to show you some additional things you can add to it, including your minor pentatonic scale. We've got a jam track that goes with it. We've got a song to work towards, all kinds of cool stuff. If you'd like to see last week's lesson, I've got a link in the description below. I'll also put a link here on this video, so you can click on that and make sure you watch that part 1 video, and this will make a lot more sense. There are some extra materials that come with this week's lesson. There's the tablature for the entire solo that I have in all 4 spots on the fretboard, and then there's the MP3 jam track. So you can get those extra materials for this week's lesson, including the part 2 video, by going to activemelody.com and doing a search for EP610. All right, so now let me demonstrate some of the things we're going to talk about in this lesson over a jam track. Here's part of it. All right, so hopefully you've got your guitar with you and you're ready to follow along. Let me just mention this pick. I don't usually talk about gear, as you know from my videos, but this is a really cool one. Anytime I find something new that I really like, I like to share this. This is a pick that was sent to me actually from a guy named Devin. He has a website called Wood Tone Strings. I'll put the URL up on the screen, but you can check them out. He's got these reasonably priced, and I really like this pick, and I'm very picky about my picks. And so this one is a kind of a bluegrasser pick. It's a 1 millimeter in thickness, but the plastic on it is really cool. It's not clicky like a lot of plastics. It's real smooth, and it's got a bevel to it. So anyway, if you're in the market for a good pick, you should check out Wood Tone Strings and see what all they've got. They've got some cool ones. This one is my favorite, though. It's the white one. I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, so let me start with this E note. We're going to do just like we did last week. And as a quick refresher, we found our E note up here on the 3rd string, 9th fret. And if you'll remember, we had from this note, if you went up 3 frets on that same string, you had your minor 3rd, or that flat 3. And I wanted you to hear the sound of the flat 3 against the root. Just to hear that sound, get that sound, get comfortable with the sound, right? And then if you went up 1 more, you went to the major 3rd. The major 3rd sound, much happier sounding. So happy, sad. One sounds kind of bluesy, one's kind of major and happy. And then we had the little box, right, underneath that root note. So that was last week. Now this week, we're going to look at some new things. So we're going to take our root note, and as you remember from that major 3rd, we slid up here, right, all the way up on the 13th fret on this 3rd string. Well, that same note exists at least in this position on this, when we're playing on this 3rd string here. That same note is right above it. So this is my root note, and right above my root note on the 2nd string, 9th fret, I've got my major 3rd. So that means this is the flat 3, and that's the major 3. This is another spot for it. So we've got it here, and you've got it here. All right, so that's another place to play that major 3rd. Now, if we go up 3 frets from that, 1, 2, 3, we're playing the 5th. And these numbers are just the numbers out of your major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's where they're coming from. So you have your 1, or your root, your 3, and your 5. Those are the 3 notes that make up your major chord. That's your E major chord, your 1, 3, and your 5. So the cool thing about this 3 to the 5 on the same string is you've got these notes in between that you can also play. Those are you can use them as chromatic notes. You don't want to land on them per se, but they're great passing tones. So you've got, there's the box, right? Hear how jazzy that sounds? Now, I'm playing a little bit of a blues, but it's got a western swing sound, it's got country, it's got blues. It's a really cool little chromatic run. This would also be your major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. Right? So just so you can sort of start to look at this in different ways. When you're in that major pentatonic scale, now I hope you can see that little chromatic run. All right, so that's our first idea, this little chromatic run on the string right above your root note, right? Now the next idea is to play the flat 7 of your 1 chord. So my E chord, what is the flat 7? How do I find that note? And it's all about the sound. Remember, you've got to get comfortable with the sound. So you just take your root and you go down 2 frets on that same string, going this direction. So you go, that's the flat 7. And you can hear how bluesy that sounds. That's the note that makes your E chord an E7. So you play your 1, 3, 5 and your flat 7, you've got an E7, and you can tell that that's just got a bluesy sound to it. So now we've got all these little ideas that are starting to happen here off of 1 note, our root note. Okay, so those are 2 ideas. The 3 to the 5 with our chromatic note, and then we've got our flat 7. There's another spot, by the way. Actually, I should have mentioned this. So your flat 7 is 2 notes down this way from your root, but it's also on the string below the root. If you go down on the string below your root and you go up 1, 2, 3 frets, you've got that same note here. So there's 2 places you can play it. In fact, I like this one because check this out. I can play a chord. I can play this little triad. Isn't that cool? So you have your flat 7, your root, and your 3. And that works in this position here. And that's just another idea you can play with that flat 7. I love that as a chord. The things you can do with that, a lot of ideas. Now the last idea that we're going to add to our root, check this out. You're going to really like this one. So we've been basically playing our root with our index finger, right, as the anchor. Let's switch fingers and play it with our middle finger. And check this out. We now just switched gears and we went into the minor pentatonic scale. I love this because this gets us from our major pentatonic scale, right, the pattern 1, into the minor pentatonic scale, just by switching fingers, really. And you can see this overlap that happens in this spot. So this would be like pattern 4 of your minor pentatonic scale. And then I slid up into pattern 5 using another little box here between the 10th fret and the 12th fret on the 2nd and the 1st string. That's the top of pattern 5. So I like to connect these 2. I like to take this pattern 4 and slide into pattern 5. Get all kinds of little bluesy ideas in there. You've also got these little bonus one. When you're up in this little box, you've got your blue note. There's another chromatic run between the 12th fret and the 10th fret on that 2nd string. That would be like the note from your blues scale, that blue note. Okay, so look at all the things we can do off of 1 note on the fretboard. We've got our box, which is major pentatonic, right? We've got our flat 3. You've got our major 3, all on that same string. You've got those on the string above it. You've got your chromatic notes, right? And then you've got your flat 7. You've got your flat 7 on the string below that. And then you've got your minor pentatonic. All happening in one area here. Now we can do the same thing on all the other E notes on the fretboard. I'm showing it to you on 1 E, on the 3rd string, but let me just demonstrate very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Just want to show you this. If I come down to this E note here on the 7th fret 5th string, here's my box, right below it, same place that it was here, on the 3rd string. We've got the flat 3, major 3rd. Now, when we come up to the 4th string to play the major 3rd, it's not going to be the note directly above it. It's going to be offset by 1 because that's just the tuning of the guitar. Like when I'm here and I'm playing that 2nd string, that 2nd string is tuned down a half pitch. That's just how the guitar is structured. So you have to compensate. So That's where your third would be, off of your root note here on the string above it. There's the flat 3. Everything else is going to work out the same. There's your little chromatic run, right? So the other thing would be, your flat 7, right? You just go down 2 frets from your root. Now, where is your minor pentatonic scale? I know a lot of you are wanting to know that. From here, well, there's my root note. We're just going to, instead of it being like it was here, we have to go down another fret. So it's like this. We've still got our boxes. In fact, I think it's easier to play it down here than it is up here. There's less finger shifting. Now I'm doing that with my ring finger. You may want to use your middle finger, whatever's most comfortable. But you can hear the sound of it and hear how it relates to your root. You've got your happy sounding major box below it. You've got your sad bluesy box up here, and you've got that extension. By the way, you've got an extension off the box below it, the major one. Check this out. Same little thing. It's exactly the same pattern. I don't want to give you too many ideas here, but just hear the sound of that and hear how these things relate. Same thing is true down here on this E note here on the 2nd fret 4th string. Box below it. The minor pentatonic scale down here would be like this. Right? Because you got to use the note behind the nut here. Here's going up into the box, the extension. Notice it's offset because we're dealing with a 2nd string. But all these same principles apply in all of these E notes. The E note up here, flat 3rd, major 3rd. Here's the major 3rd on the string above it. There's the chromatic walk. Anyway, I think you're getting the idea here that all of the E's do the same thing here. And to me, when I think of the fretboard this way, it makes it a little easier because now all I have to do is kind of get comfortable with these ideas, and then I start connecting the E's. So I go, walk down 2 frets to the flat 7, but that puts me in position to get down in here. Watch this. I went down into that minor pentatonic scale for this E. You see what we just did? We went from this one to this one. And I can go down to the one down here. You can see I'm just connecting the E's. I can come up to this one, the box underneath it, and so forth. Okay, so now let's start having some fun with this and making some music. Let's listen to the first part of this lead, which is going to be playing off of this E note here, the first one we started with, 3rd string, 9th fret. And listen to this first idea, and we'll talk about how to play it. All right, so it started with that E note, 9th fret, 3rd string. And then I came down here to the 11th fret, 4th string, which is in the little box below it. So it's... And then watch this. That's the next phrase. It's just walking up that little run between the 3 and the 5, but with the chromatic notes. With a slide into the 3rd, I always like to slide into that 3rd from the flat 3 to the major 3, or the minor 3 to the major 3. And then I played the flat 7, that E7 sound. And all I did was come down to this 12th fret 4th string. Remember I showed you that. Here's my root note, and we can go down on the string below it. When I say below it, I'm talking about pitch, not vicinity, not where it is in location to the ceiling, but it's the pitch below it. So kept that bar there on the 9th fret and played the root and the 3rd. So it's like this. Then the song goes to the 4 chord, which is our A. And I played this. Started with that. Let's look at that. We're on the 3rd string. We go to the 12th fret, 11th fret, 9th fret. and then down to the 11th fret 4th string. Well, we walked down into the box, right? These last 3 notes are in the box, the major box. But when I started with that note, that's my flat 3. Remember, that's my minor 3rd. And I talked about this last week. Over the 4 chord, that note has a different meaning. It means the flat 7 of my 4 chord. So it's my A7 sound. Hear that? That's that note. So I just went into that note and walked it down just to hit that one note. I only had to hit it once to spell out the kind of that bluesy sound of the A. And then we switched gears and went into the minor pentatonic scale. This is where I played my E note here with my middle finger and played this. So it's middle finger on that 9th fret 3rd string, then we come up to the 8th fret 2nd string, 8, 10, and a bend and release on that 10th fret 2nd string. And that's minor pentatonic scale pattern 4. You've done this a million times probably if you've played the blues. And then after that, I came into the little extension. Just sliding, I started here on that 11th fret. And that's that blue note, right? So I started on that note, but it's really inside this little box. And then back down into pattern 1. And now I'm going to play this. So that's sliding up to the 9th fret 4th string. It's just, notice that note is just below my root. And then there's the flat 7. Remember, here's my root. You go down 2 frets. And then land on that note below the root. That note, by the way, is the 5. Because the song has now gone to the B7, which is my 5 chord. These notes are just my minor pentatonic scale. This would be pattern 4. But look at what we've done. We've now walked down into another zone. Because here's my E note down here, and here's my minor pentatonic, right? There's that little extension. Oh, that's where we are. We're in that little extension part of the minor pentatonic scale. The little extension box. I don't have better names for this stuff. But you can hear how landing on the 5 works perfectly over the 5 chord. You just need to know where your 5s are, and you know there's one below your root right there. And then I concluded that lick with like a little walk down using that blue note. Here's the box extension, right? So it's 9, 7 on the 3rd string. Then we go down the 4th string and play 9, 8, 7. There's that chromatic note, that blue note. And then down into to my E down here. So and then that final tag off this E note goes like this. You can see it's just that 5th fret to the 7th fret on the 5th string and 4th string. And even though that's just the first time through, that should give you a ton of ideas. Now, in the jam track, in the part 2, we're going to go through this same song. We're going to go through it 3 more times. I'm going to, now I'm going to look at this being my root E note. Then we're going to look at it down here. And then finally, we're going to look at this one. So that covers kind of most of the fretboard. And I'm trying to connect the fretboard through this solos, kind of going from one position to the next and how you would do that if you were playing a solo. I know that this is a different way of thinking about it than chord shapes, and it's really focusing on a single note. But this is another approach, and you need to do it all. There's no right answer. And when I'm playing a lead, sometimes I'm thinking about where's my notes? Where's the 3? Where's the 5? Sometimes I'm thinking about chord shapes. Sometimes I'm thinking about pentatonic patterns or scale patterns. And sometimes I'm thinking about arpeggios. It's a combination of these things. But this is a really good one. And you can start to sound pretty advanced by just kind of learning some of these things off of that root note. All right, we'll see you in part 2 where we cover the rest of this. And if you have any questions or comments, any light bulbs, please share that on wherever you're watching this. I always appreciate that. I read through all of them, and I think it's super helpful. All right, we'll see you in part 2.